Here we go.
Ooh.
We are live. Oh, yes.
Matt Kelley. I am so excited for this, baby. Let's do it.
Oh, feels good. Feels good to sit down with you. This is your first time. This is your first time on the mind. I can't believe we've been podcasting for so many years, you and me, and you've been on the channel for more than a year and never actually been on the Mind and Mansion show. That's a shame on me.
Hey, no, listen, sometimes things happen when they're supposed to happen, right? So, Matt, you asked me to come on July 19th at 12 o'clock. That's my time. That was the time I was supposed to get on. I'm super excited. Been a fan of the show for a long time. So this is a little bit of this is a big deal, Mr. Kelley. This is
a big deal. This show's been on almost 10 years.
Right.
It can't go forever, by the way. So it's that we are eventually going to have to wind this show down eventually. Like Seinfeld went 9 seasons.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
9, 10 seasons. That's really the sweet spot for shows like this. I don't know how much longer I can keep going with it, but I'm glad we were able to get you on. I mean, I started it back in 2013, started doing a show, and actually built Player Profiler as a tool to help me do the podcast. So I could easily look up all these stats on the fly while I'm in front of the microphone. Right. And then the site itself kind of took off. So that was kind of a cool thing. And then other things like we have the Dynasty Dominator app. Then we did the Breakout Finder app. The Breakout Finder app was Nate's idea. And I'm wearing the Breakout Finder hat with the original Breakout Finder logo that Nate created, which is basically a direct ripoff of FootJoy.
It does look like a FootJoy hat. I do have a FootJoy hat. It looks like a FootJoy hat.
Yeah, I was like, Nate, if we're going to do this, we got to get a new logo. We got to get a new logo that's not FootJoy. Can we do that? So then I designed the next logo.
Well, listen, it does look a little bit FootJoyish, but I mean, the FB does make sense. So, I mean, you got to do it, but improvements were made, rightfully so. Right, Matt?
I think that we did a great job. The original Breakout Finder was a spreadsheet. It was a spreadsheet, like a Google sheet that calculated the breakout ratings for players, like their probability of breaking out. And then I said, well, that's nice, but why can't we just make it an app? Isn't that make it convenient and easy? And so you can go to the App Store, get the Breakout Finder. It's $5. There's a few premium metrics, which are a little bit extra. I think another $2-3.
Yeah, I think
to get
$3.
These additional metrics, and then after that, every year it's $5. It's just every year with the Dynasty Dominator. Maybe with the first time you have to load the rookies, so it might be $10 when you first get it and you first install it.
You have to double up. It's $5 for the app, and then you have to pay for that year's $5. So $10 to start, $5 after that. But the information on it is superior to everything else out there. I mean, it's a fantastic app. So what you're telling me right now, Matt Kelley, is that you were the Steve Jobs of this operation. You saw the vision of the app, saw the vision of making it consumable for all the people out there. So where's your turtleneck? Shouldn't you steal
I am wearing
Jason's
a black
turtleneck?
shirt. Yeah.
You got
I'm
Jason,
wearing
get this man
shirt.
a turtleneck.
I couldn't believe it. Like the Breakout Finder, I thought was a great idea. I was like, Nate, I'm gonna make your idea a reality. I'm gonna take this thing from a spreadsheet and make it a product. And then I said, all you have to do, Nate, is you just have to commit to creating content around it. And he had Breakout Finder TV for a year. And then a year went by and I looked up and I was like, hey, Nate, what happened to Breakout Finder TV? What happened to the articles? What happened to, us having a whole Breakout Finder podcast and all that? What happened? We had a Breakout Finder podcast for a year. It was him and it was Ryan Lopes.
Ryan Lopes, good pull. I remember. You listen, Matt, I've been listening to the channel for a while, so I remember these names. You and Nate, though, were a great team. You were a great team. Built the Breakout Finder. Sonic Truth was always a great listen. But like you said, not all great things last forever.
Where was the follow through with Nate, though? That's what I've always wondered that. I was like, we had this app is really gorgeous, and it provides more information than we ever imagined originally when we built it. And it's super cool. Why is it so difficult to get motivated to talk about it? Like, there it is. It's right there. See it? You can see it right there.
Good app. It's a good looking app.
Look, and it got a little scroller of all the top breakout ratings there by position. And it's like, how is that challenging to talk about? It's not at all. How is it difficult to like summon the enthusiasm to market it, talk about it, build content around it? But he did find someone to do it, though. So
to build it out.
The point of this whole thing is like eventually he's like, listen, I got to find someone that's going to be able to write these articles on breakoutfinder.com. Because I believe we have I just want to check. I believe sometimes I lose track of the websites we even have. I believe we have Breakout Finder. Yes, we do. We have breakoutfinder.com, and we have a few of the Devi Diamonds, right? Britt Sanders and Noah Hills wrote some articles. Right. We have the old Breakout Finder podcasts up there. So breakoutfinder.com exists. Oh. I just forgot it existed, and I think Nate's long forgotten it existed. But back when he found someone to write articles for breakoutfinder.com, his name was Theo Greminger.
No kidding. That's where the OG started?
Yes, that's how I was introduced to Theo through Nate.
Wow. Okay. That's it. I didn't know that. I didn't know the OG story. I didn't know the origin story of OG, so that's good to know.
Yeah, and he's absolutely killing it. I mean, every day, just so everybody knows, every day, Theo sends me a new idea. Like next week, we're doing crossover week.
Can't wait.
I'm going to join the Trade God show. I'm going to join another show. I can't remember the other show I'm joining. I know I'm joining Trade Gods. And, the Dynasty Roundtable.
Yep.
So I'm going to be joining a couple shows. You're doing a couple different shows. And so we're all hosting different shows next week. So I just want to preview that for everybody, the crossover week. Of course, that was Theo's idea. Then he brings in High-Low, Mark Garcia, to do the First Mover show. And Mark Garcia is super well-established in the industry, very well-regarded, especially by high-stakes players. And I've been in a Dynasty league with him, and he's like a beast. So I was like, okay. Right. So he's developing all these relationships. He has incredible guests on the press coverage show. Mm-hmm. And he's always hitting me like he's a real content guy. He is like lives and breathes fantasy content. You can tell he's one of these people where his head is always thinking about.
The mind's always a churning.
That's right. He's always considering the next thing, like new ideas for how to talk about fantasy, talk about different concepts, people that have fresh perspectives that he wants to come in and so he's like the perfect guy to run our content. And thinking back to, he basically sent Nate an email and was like, can I write articles on breakoutfinder.com even if no one's going to read them? And Nate's like, sure.
Well, I mean, listen, OG, sometimes it's written in the stars, Matt. The OG comes to Nate. He says, listen, I got to write a couple of articles for you. And then flash forward a few years, he's an absolute beast in the colossus that you've built. I mean, listen, this is the Team Avengers assembling, and we're just getting stronger, baby. Player profiler to the moon, and Theo's a big part of that. Listen, getting to know OG has been awesome. I love Theo, and just he has no problem shoot me a quick call, asking my opinion, asking for help. And what's great about him is
he calls me every day, and I look forward to his calls. Yeah, it's either about the U.S. men's team, the U.S. men's soccer team, or about some new content idea. It's either one of those two things.
Content or men's soccer. He's so diverse, the OG. So diverse, Matt.
Yeah, he's great. He also has a bunch of kids, and he's always on the road. He's always got kids in the car. And he's like, yeah, I was just driving to this soccer match, and I got this idea for something we should be doing. And I'm like, yes, Theo, make it happen. Make it so. 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 All right, so I got to bring you in, buddy. I got to bring you in. We got to do a show here. A little pre-show action, but we got a nice little show sheet here to get for the people. So I think I've got some ideas. I've got some ideas. I mean, because you are, I think, are true talent in terms of I saw it fully manifest at the draft in Kansas City. How you and Cody carried day 3. And I was like, look at Matty. Look at Matty. Like, I had no idea that you were that sort of plugged in to NFL draft analysis. And your enthusiasm is infectious. You know? Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. A creator's creator. And the host of the fantasy game plan. The game plan on plan. He is a true trade god on the Underworld channel. From Player Profile, it is Matty Kiwoom!
Oh,
talk to me.
Baby, Matty, this is Dream Come True, Mind of Mansion, July 19th, 2023 will forever be implanted in monumental days in Mr. Kiwoom's content creating career.
You glitched the hell out. What happened?
Am I glitching right now?
You just glitched like crazy.
No way.
Yeah, we just had
Right after that epic
an
entrance,
incredibly
I glitched?
robust pre-show where we were talking. Then we had another 10 minutes talking about the origins of the Breakout Finder and Theo Greminger and how he came to us. And then we kicked the show off. I launch into this incredible introduction with the Bulls intro music. And then the moment you started talking, it was just buffering and glitch.
What?
I swear to God, that happened.
This is insanity. This is my first time on Mind of Mansion. First time speaking on Mind of Mansion live.
Yeah.
And that glitched out?
No, actually, you know what we'll do for the podcast? We'll accentuate it. We'll do like a whole garble sound. We'll make it because it was just frozen. Like on the stream, you're just frozen. But in the podcast, what we'll do is we'll have it. You'll be able. We'll get you all garbled.
Oh,
It'll be
no.
great. It'll be funny.
This is insanity.
Yeah,
I can't believe this just happened. I mean, we've been talking for a half hour, Matt, and all of a sudden I glitch out during the best intro I've ever been a part of in my entire life.
Oh yeah, it was great. No, it was actually good. It was actually good. No, it was actually good. It'll be like we'll do how they do like the rainbow bars that come down on the television when the station goes offline.
God.
We'll do the whole thing.
Listen.
We'll do the whole thing in the podcast. We'll really. That's the beauty of the post editing with the podcast. So we can raise the production level there and really lean into the glitch.
I cannot believe this is. This might be Alan's fault. I kind of stumbled over his name when he came on the game plan. Kind of came out Aaron. Maybe he's behind the scenes sabotaging my debut on the Mind of Mansion, glitching me out in the most monumental moment of my content creating career. This is insanity. I can't believe this happened.
It's funny to me. Like these kinds of coincidences. It's just a random event. It just bad luck. Whatever. You can't make it up, right?
The
moment that we start the show, that's what I mean. How? Like how could
we had been talking for a half hour, Matt?
No, but you are on the channel at least twice a week with the game plan show that you do on the weekend, and then the Trade God show you do with Jason Allwine. You're not a glitchy guy.
I haven't glitched out in a long time. I did one time. A little behind the scenes. We had a meeting. Maybe I think it was a year and a half ago, and I glitched out then. You said, listen, Matty Kiwoom, if you want to get on the Big Dog Show, you got to improve your internet. I went out and got the next mesh routers. I plugged in. The internet's been fantastic ever since. Firing. I checked before. We talked, blah, blah, bam. And the fantasy god said, listen, young buck, you're going to have to deal with a little bit extra obstacle here today, glitching out on the Mind of Mansion with the Podfather.
Yeah, it was a major glitch. And we'll lean into it, though. You have to lean into these things. That's my lesson for all creators is nothing's ever perfect, and lean into it. Lean into the mistakes. That's why we have outtakes. We have outtakes because we love to celebrate the funny moments. Alan talking about his droopy balls. I mean, those are going to be fun. We're making those outtakes right now for the Sonic Truth. We're doing the outtakes. We're just he can't ride a bike. Did you know Alan can't ride a bike because of his balls?
I tuned into the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast yesterday, and I learned a little bit too much about Mr. Seslowski.
Someone said there's solar flares happening right now.
Wait a second. So if there's
someone said it was
flare,
solar flares. Actually, yeah. So in the chat, they're saying it's solar flare. So it's not your fault.
So the first time
it's not your fault
that I'm on Mind a Mansion, a solar flare occurs.
It's not your
good
fault.
Luck or bad luck, Matt?
Matty, it's not your fault.
Thank God. I mean,
it's not your fault. Listen to me. It's not your fault.
I'm listening. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it, Podfather.
It's not your fault.
Day. It was
Listen, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I wish I had a sweater on and a bunch of books behind me.
Some glasses. You could point them at me. Mr. Kiwoom, it's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
This is hey, at least we have a story for the rest of our lives.
Will. It's not your fault.
Will.
So
what a start, Matt. What a freaking start.
You can't drive to the store without pulling over and beating people's asses on the sidewalk. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. So tell me.
Sure.
Tell me about this game plan show that you do. Talk about the whole purpose of it.
So the game plan in its inception was to help, fantasy managers maximize their scoring output on a week-to-week basis. So we did things like bargain bin hunting for some cheap streaming options, trade targets. And then as we got into the offseason, it's kind of evolved. It took on that Dynasty cap. And now we're really just talking about big picture best ball. We're talking about dynasty theories. We're talking about philosophies and having some of the greatest minds in fantasy football be on the show. Yourself, you came on. We talked about taking over an orphan team, which was a blast. So that's really been how the game plan has come to be seen today. I mean, now we're just racking up guests. We had Pat Fitzmaurice on the game plan last weekend. Derek Brown's coming on next week. The Podfather's been on. It's been a crazy run for the game plan.
Yeah, I mean, Jason's saying that he had a glitch as well on the Wake and Take show. So I think the solar flare thing is real. By the way, I love seeing all these members of the underworld. We got Ross Young. Okay, Ross Young's in the chat. Jason, your co-host from Trade Gods, is in the chat.
Absolutely. Shout out, Jay.
We've got the producer, our Sonic Truth producer, Tyler Knievel. He's in the chat.
Legend.
We've got Matt Babich, one of the top writers at Player Profiler. He's in the chat. I love seeing so much of the Player Profiler community get active, plus all the listeners and everybody that's subscribed. Incredible activity right now. You're inspiring a lot of activity in the chat, which is really cool. Talk about this Trade God show you do with Jason. We'll put links in the description to these podcasts so you can get subscribed to Trade Gods. You get subscribed to the game plan. When do you go live on YouTube with the Trade God show?
Jason and I go live each Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what it's become, honestly, is a great connection with the Player Profiler Discord. Another reason that you need to get in there, because some of your favorite members of the underworld are talking football 24/7. Me, Jason, Matt, we're all in there talking football. So get in that Player Profiler Discord ASAP. You can get there right on our site. But now
it's playerprofiler.com/chat.
/chat will get you right into
playerprofiler.com/chat, playerprofiler.com/chat. We have over 2,000 members in the Discord. I've been in the Discord. I was in the Discord yesterday talking about how I'm repurposing content and posted a couple things in different channels because we have the 3 players you have to draft video. I just did my top 5 late round Konami QBs.
Right.
And then we'll talk about this in a few minutes. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much, but I do want to tease something that we'll get to once we start our segment 10 burning questions. One of the questions is going to be your do not draft quarterback, your do not draft running back. And I've got 4 do not draft players. I've been working on this video this week. And I just posted on Twitter at @fantasy_mansion a little bit of context for the comparables for Quentin Johnston. And I want to know, and in the chat, you all can answer me. We're going to talk about Quentin Johnston in a little bit, but in the meantime, until we get to that segment, I'll let this percolate. Okay, let us know in the chat, right? Or if you're listening to the podcast, go to the Discord, put it in there.
Right.
Let us know who is your favorite comp, because there's a lot of comps for Quentin Johnston. There's actually a lot of comps for Quentin Johnston.
You put a lot out there too.
There's a lot of them, right? There's a lot of guys with great burst that were, day 1, day 2 picks that were
over 6 feet.
Yeah, have size and were productive but not dominant in college, and that really dominated, especially through yak with a limited route tree. So there's and we were able to they were able to scheme this player into space in order to conceal the shaky hands, and give them a lot of bubble screens and a lot of slants.
Make it easy for them.
Right, yeah, in college. So there's actually quite a few players like that in the database that
recognizable
have that,
name.
The similar size, similar athleticism, similar dominator rating, similar route tree. You want to hear the list real quick just before we get started? We haven't really started the show yet. I just want to make sure that I'm getting out ahead of myself. I know we're going to talk about this later, but I want people to have this list so they can think about this list, because it's a really tough thing. Because I know you love Quentin Johnston. I love Quentin Johnston. You love Quentin Johnston. We all love Quentin Johnston. And I've got an incredible list of comps. I mean, these are dynamic playmakers in college. And they are all players that a number of people, an incredible number of people, were excited about when they were coming into the league. And so it's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough for everyone out there, all the listeners, to actually pick their favorite comp, because there's so many good ones here. And to actually narrow it down to one, I think, is going to be damn near impossible for most people, because they're going to be like, oh my God, I love this guy. I love this guy. I love this guy. How do I choose? It's so hard to choose amongst so many explosive, incredible, dynamic, exciting playmakers from college football history. And again, guys that came into the league with a lot of fanfare. Right? Trumpets blaring when they came into the league.
Excitement, if you will.
You want me to give the list?
Let's hear this list.
I have a list. It's on Twitter at @fantasy_mansion, and it posted 20 minutes ago, and there's already 26 comments.
2 minutes before the solar flare.
So it might be due to the solar flare. I don't know what it is, but clearly there's people that are engaged with this. They're interested. They have opinions. So you want me to give you the list of players that are comparable based on all those things: athleticism, yak, route tree, dominator rating, late breakout, all those things?
1 second. Okay, now I'm ready.
Okay, now you ready now? Because this is a good list. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay, actually, I can give you guys from every conference. This list has multiple guys from Conference USA. So if you want multiple guys from Conference USA, I'll give you Kevin White and Brashad Perriman. You want multiple guys from the Big Ten? No problem. I got Paris Campbell. I got Devin Funchess. Right? And I got 3 guys from the SEC. The SEC. The SEC is the great bastion of talent, right? The great feeder conference for the NFL. And I'm like, I got guys. I got 4. I can double it up. I got Terrace Marshall. Okay, I got Justin Hunter from Tennessee, Chris Conley from Georgia.
Yeah,
that's a long list. Dante Moncrief from Ole Miss. These are all comps for Quentin Johnston. I go down the list, and there's so many. Right? What about the Big 12?
Comps?
ACC comps? I got some ACC comps.
I'd love to hear an ACC comp.
You want an ACC comp? How about Martavis Bryant?
Clemson. Okay, there's one.
I got plenty, dude. I got plenty. How about Pac-12? You want Pac-12?
I would love Pac-12. Love SC.
I got. How about N'Keal Harry? How about Jalen Strong?
2 Arizona State guys, 2 Sun Devils.
Yeah, I even got. What about like an independent conference?
You have one of those?
Independent conference. How about like Notre Dame? How about Miles Boykin?
Miles
Boykin. Day 2
There's
pick.
Another one.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, I got another ACC guy. This is a player I liked a lot. Stephen Hill.
Stephen Hill, yes.
Yeah.
From Pitt, if I remember correctly.
Yep. I love the Bustler. I love Hakeem Bustler. That's one you can't go wrong with, right? Because, again, I made up that nickname, so I like that one a lot. And then I saved the best for last because guess what else? Guess what else?
What else? What else you got? What's the last one on the list here?
Guess what else? Oh, we get the chat is mad. They got the chat is mad. Oh, this is a horrible take. This is a horrible take. We don't want to hear about what the metrics say. We want to just put our heads in the sand. We don't want to hear about this. We just want to go back and enjoy some of the tackle breaking, right? The stiff arms that we saw from Quentin Johnston, as if that's going to translate to the NFL. Yeah, we can't. You don't ruin my day with truth about a first-round wide receiver I love, because I'm new to this. I'm new to this whole first-round wide receiver thing. I've never seen them bust. Don't ease me into this. Don't ease me in with lowering expectations. I want to get caught blindsided in the head by these wide receiver busts, because I don't want to be prepared for the sheer volume of bust receivers that we see every year in, year out, in the first round and in the second round and in the third round. And they just all happen to look a lot like Quentin Johnston. A lot of these guys, including guys from TCU. In recent memory, I'll give you Jalen Reagor, and you go back a little further, an even closer comp is Josh Doxson. But this is a bad take. This is an L. Is it really
even a take?
No, this is what Twitter is saying, and this is what people in the chat are saying. This is an L. This is an L. You don't understand. You don't understand that in the NFL, he's going to learn how to run routes, and he's going to fix the shaky hands. And he is actually versatile, even though he didn't play on special teams. He didn't run the ball out of the backfield. He didn't show it. Even some of the versatility that you saw from Paris Campbell, though Paris Campbell is a comp, Paris Campbell was a hell of a lot more versatile in college than Quentin Johnston ever was. So Paris Campbell was a better prospect than Quentin Johnston.
I want to ask you this, though, Matt. Is it even truly a take, or are you just providing information for the people that tune in? I don't know if it's so much a take as much as you're just giving them the information to make their own decisions. But if, people want to go back down that alley of Jalen Strong and Josh Doxson, Stephen Hill, once again, one guy you did forget that I remember was on that list is John Baldwin. You had been playing fantasy a long time to remember John Baldwin.
Oh, my God, you just pulled John Baldwin. Wow, look at you. That's another one.
Quite a while, Mr. Kelley. I've been playing fantasy a while now.
What conference was he in? Was that Pitt?
It was Pitt, but I don't know if they were the ACC at the time.
The ACC, the Conference USA. I don't know what that is, but that is another one. East. And I got guys in the chat going, this guy's analytics are actually good. Yeah, a lot of these guys' analytics are good. If you're just looking at yards per route run for a guy like Stephen Hill, a lot of these guys, their yards per route run are good. That's right, because they're getting schemed into space. The yards per route run was really good for N'Keal Harry, but all these, there's a lot more than just a single metric. You can't just sort a single metric at yards per route run across all conferences and then just draft based on that. It's not that easy. You can have good yak numbers, and your yards per route run, if it is driven by yak, it's a lot less important and predictive than if it's driven by air yards. The problem with the deep targets for Quentin Johnston is he didn't run a lot of those routes, and when he did, he dropped them.
Right, bad hands, which is something that I guess people are hoping changes in the pros, because we've seen a couple. But listen, Matt, come back.
Terrible.
Matt,
you
come
understand?
back. Come
like
back,
he's
back.
no good. He shouldn't have been drafted in the first 3 rounds. It made no sense. Like, he's got a great yards per reception. Yeah, at TCU on bubble screens and slants and go routes, he could run 3 routes. You think he's going to learn all of this? I mean, I think he's going to have a very busy offseason in Los Angeles. He's got to learn how to run NFL routes. He's got to learn how to catch the ball. He basically has to learn how to be a receiver from the ground up, because the way that they deployed him at TCU was essentially as a running back who
Out wide.
they're just out wide, right?
Yeah.
A wide running back. We're just gonna, instead of a handoff, we're just gonna pitch it out to him. And these highlights are hilarious. No one's near him on a slant pass, right?
correct.
Or like, he
correct.
beat Julius Brents. No, Julius Brents got picked off and fell down, and he was wide open. Right? Where
Julius Brents got drafted though, Matt. Julius Brents did get drafted.
If you're a film person, I'm not a film person. I could, like I said, you see tendencies in the data, right? You could. I just gave you all the players that have similar college profiles to Quentin Johnston. You could choose to ignore that data and insist that you go back even further and that he's actually comparable to, I don't know, he's a once every 20 years outlier. He's Anquan Bolden. But here's the problem.
Dangerous.
Anquan Bolden was not explosive. So this is a thing you learn when you watch youth sports, is that the young athletes that are explosive learn all the bad habits, and they're less likely to actually become technicians, right? Like, for example, if Devontae Smith could run super fast and jump super high, he would have never become Devontae Smith. Do you understand that? He had to be less athletic. Same with Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison couldn't have become Jordan Addison if he had Stephen Hill's body.
That's the Steph Curry argument also. He's a little shorter, so he learned how to shoot. These guys were a little shorter. They learned how to run routes.
Exactly. It's a crutch. And you can watch it. Like, for example, I was at my daughter's soccer practice, and she's at this special summer training, and I know the girls that are the explosive wingers that can run fast, and they're the ones that, they're scoring the goals, especially when they're younger. Right. And you can watch them in drills and they're just blowing through cones and it's super sloppy. But during the game, they're going to get the ball and they're going to make plays with sheer athleticism. My daughter's different. My daughter's out here precisely going through meticulously the cone drills and precisely passing. And she's doing everything a little slower. Right. She doesn't have the twitch. Right, but she's learning how to be a technician so that as she ages, she's going to have a bigger and bigger role in the team, and these other girls are going to start, their overall role is going to be reduced slightly as they go up in competition. And that's exactly what you see in all sports. It's all sports. It's the explosive handicap. It's almost like you have a 100th percentile vertical jump. If you look at the player profile or database, you go to data analysis. I did this today. I went to data analysis and I sorted based on burst score for wide receivers. And it was a cemetery. I might as well have been walking through a haunted house.
What happened? You might as well be what?
I might as well have been walking through a haunted house.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
It's gross, but it's understandable, right? Like, you get it. Like, until you actually are on the outside looking in youth sports, because I only participated in youth sports, and when you're in it, you don't realize what's going on. But when you're a parent and you're on the outside looking in on youth sports, you see exactly how it plays out, right? And then also you see how you as an analyst were wrong. Like, I was fooled by Josh Doxson. I was fooled by Stephen Hill. And if I don't then in turn learn those lessons and incorporate that into my analysis in 2023, then I'm a fool.
You can't keep losing to the same type of archetypes, right? You can't keep making the same mistakes. And Quentin Johnston, we can see this a mile away. If we do see him bust, which, I mean, indicators are pointing that way. I know we want him to be good.
He's a surefire bust.
He looks like it. He looks like it.
It won't happen.
Matt, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a quick sidebar.
There isn't a single thing that he does well that easily translates to the NFL. And it's the exact opposite for Jordan Addison. And so that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Go to YouTube and go watch whatever highlights are up there or we have them actually on the player pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can just go to Quentin Johnston on Player Profiler, and we have his college highlights. Okay?
Right.
Scroll down, we have the college highlights. Then go to Jordan Addison, scroll down, look at the college highlights. These are polar opposite players. One should have been drafted by the Chargers as the obvious replacement to Keenan Allen, and they galaxy brained it. Okay?
That's the big point here. That is a huge point here for the terms of the team building of the Los Angeles Chargers. Damn, they had something right in front of them. Kid was from that area, played college in that area, Matt. But can I ask you something, a little sidebar note here? You know, you're talking about your daughter's soccer. She's going to be # good at the sport. She's not just going to rely just on her athletic ability. I got 3 girls myself. They're a little young at the time. So when you get them to practice, what makes them, do you see these traits like they're willing to practice? She wants to stay late for drills. Are these the things that we notice? Because these are also the things we hear about the Jordan Addisons. These are the things we hear about the Slim Reapers, that they'll stay late. They'll do the extra time. So do you notice that in your daughter too?
It was all of a sudden, man. I mean, it was a struggle, right? We said you have to do something. She was only playing tennis and golf.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't playing any team sports. And we said, you have to play a team sport. That's just a requirement if you want to be in this family, you know, cook and eat the food we cook, you know, you got to play a team sport.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I play basketball on Fridays. Okay. Whatever.
Nice.
Okay. So you got to play a team sport. Well, actually, my wife doesn't. Wait a second.
But
anyway,
she sets the rules, right? The wife
right,
doesn't
but
set
anyway,
the rules. You're a smart man.
Listen, you got to play in a team sport. Too bad. And then so she was last off the bench for the rec soccer team, right? And she was very discouraged, and she's not a natural explosive athlete. Like I said, she's not a twitchy person. Most people are not twitchy, right?
You're right.
And
that's
those that are have a natural inclination for sports. So they're also going to be the ones that are more likely to volunteer, more likely to bug their parents, get me in this league, you know, move me up a level, let me play with the older kids. Like I have a nephew, and he's like that. Like he's always playing with the older kids in the neighborhood. He's always asking his parents to get him in more sports camps and do more sports. He's always asking to go outside and play sports, and his brother has no interest, right? His brother wants, you know, to play a board game or wants to be on the iPad or wants to read a book, whatever it is. So these are just different personalities. So to take someone who's more of, I'd like to, you know, work on more artistic endeavors and introduce them to sports, it's a very, I'm not saying I'm an expert in doing this, but you have to be very careful not to push them too hard or they'll just shut down.
Right.
You got to make sure it's fun. Yeah. And then so we would go out in the yard and we would play, and then, you know, sometimes she would win, sometimes I would win. I wouldn't totally sandbag, but like I would invest in her and say, listen, I'm here for you. I want to go out and play if you want to play. And she wouldn't want to play, and she wouldn't want to play. I was like, please, you have to, you know, on a day when you have to just every day say, we're going to do a physical activity today. What physical activity did you do today? And if they don't have an answer, then they have to do something, right? Ride your bike, whatever it is. Or a choice is we can go out and we can play some soccer in the yard. And then you're investing, and then all of a sudden it kind of starts to, before you know it, you're boiling the frog.
Like the momentum
you're
gets
slowly getting them a little bit more invested, And then we started introducing her to the U.S. women's soccer team.
Very cool.
And she watched a documentary on the women's soccer team. And then, so there's just coming in from different angles to slowly immerse her in the sport, and just to keep her to enjoy it, and it's not a chore. Because for at least 6 months, the first 6 months, you could tell she was miserable. And I'm sure
learning something new is tough, right?
80% of kids would just give up, just throw themselves on the ground and be like, I'm not going.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, as a parent, you can't, like, if they're just going to fall on the ground and they're going to refuse, like, you can't ultimately
make him
drag them right onto the field while they're on the ground.
That's not a good
you
look.
have
Correct.
to participate. Eventually, there's going to be some compromise that has to be made. So you have to know that and just make sure that they know that you're willing to put the time in to help them, and that you're out there, and that you'll go out there when the weather's not great and practice with them. And that makes a difference. And then I think after a year of just slowly getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, the switch came on where I could tell that she wanted to be out there.
Right.
And that she was like putting on her cleats before anyone asked her to put on her cleats.
She's coming to you now even.
Right. And so that's a real aha moment where the light comes on and you're like, wait, they're ready to go before we didn't have to bug them to get ready.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
and
awesome.
then when you go and you can tell that she's staying after and kicking goals and practicing her goal kicking after the practice is over. And you're like, okay, we got to go. And then you realize you're like, oh, wait, this is what I've been waiting for a year. Is this like appreciation for the sport? So I don't think it's automatic, right? I don't think you're going to take a kid who's not, like I said, a natural athlete who's naturally inclined to sports. I don't think it's going to be something that every kid is going to take to, but there's certainly ways you can do it. And yeah, so I think that these kids also, they probably have a limited ceiling, right? I don't know how far you can take it, right? But all I know is Jordan Addison and Devontae Smith, and, you know, you can go all the way back to even like a Jerry Rice. You know, most people think that the NFL is like all Julio Jones level athletes.
Right.
And you need that level of athleticism in order to break out. And what is shocking to me is how many, especially at a position like receiver, that you would expect needs that upper echelon athleticism. When you can go back and you look at an Anquan Bolden, how the hell did he post a 42% dominator rating at Florida State in 2004 when Florida State was one of the top programs in the country? How the hell did he do that running a 4.7?
Having no burst, no agility.
Right. He was a technician. Yeah. So when someone says, oh, Quentin Johnston is Anquan Bolden, horseshit. It's not possible. It's not possible because he's too explosive to be Anquan Bolden. He has 90th percentile burst where Bolden had 5th percentile burst. So they're not comparable in any way. Bolden had to learn how to be a wide receiver from the ground up and build himself up from the youth level to get to that point where once he got to the upper echelon of college football, he was posting a 40% plus dominator rating. Quentin Johnston never had to put that time in because he was so athletic. And so when he gets to TCU, guess what? He caps out at a 32% dominator rating. That's the massive red flag. Whenever we talk about players underperforming their athleticism in college, that's Martavis Bryant. That's the list I gave, with the exception of like N'Keal Harry, who had a 40+% dominator rating. I think he was the only one on that list. It was actually a dominant producer. When you're talking about the share of the offense that he accounted for, almost everyone else on that list underwhelmed in the dominator rating in spite of 90th percentile explosive athleticism.
Yeah, and also an offense that did make it easy for him. We talked about that at the beginning of this, that it was made easy for Quentin Johnston because the route tree wasn't diverse. He was only asked to handle a few different routes to win. And those are where the highlights come from. You talk about the cornerback falling down or him just running up the field with no one around him. Those guys can win in college. But if you look at the list, we don't see a lot of winners on that list, Matt Kelley.
Right, but the philosophical question is, how far can you take it if you don't have that burst, if you don't have that twitch? And again, most people that I talk to just assume that 90% of wide receivers, think about the wide receiver position. Think about how athletic the wide receiver position looks on television.
crazy athletic. They're fast, they're big, they jump high, they make one-handed catches. It looks super athletes. That's why we tune in. That's why Red Zone Channel is so popular, because these guys make it look so incredible. Such a hard task. They make it look so good and so spectacular.
And then when we actually have the data in front of us, so that's why I would say I'm one of the people in the industry that you would want to listen to on this particular topic, the ability to translate athleticism into on-field production at the NFL level. Why am I particularly qualified? Because for years, going back to the advent of the Breakout Finder app, I've been immersed in all of these metrics: freshman year production versus sophomore year production versus junior year production, and looking at how that compares to workout metrics and what are the drivers, what are the most predictive metrics. And what the least predictive metric for wide receivers happens to be burst score. So whenever you have a Quentin Johnston who actually is underperforming where you would expect in the Breakout Finder, it's because the metrics where he's performing well are the least predictive, and the metrics where he's underwhelming are the most predictive. And you go to a guy like Jordan Mattison, and wait, he's killing it in the metrics that actually matter. And isn't that, especially in Dynasty, isn't that so much? Don't you feel so much safer drafting a Jordan Mattison, because you have on average
100%.
Every Dynasty team has one first-round pick every year. You have one. Think about that. One opportunity every year for a first-round talent, on average in Dynasty. So you would think that would be such a precious asset, and that the last thing you would do would be treat it in a cavalier way and just say YOLO, right? You have one pick per year.
Light on fire.
Don't YOLO that pick. So
No.
You should want to play it safe with your first round pick. You should be trying to lock in a high floor and then ideally some theoretical upside on top of that. But lock in the floor first. And isn't it comforting to know that this guy made himself, he was a self-made player, that he wasn't heavily recruited, right? Like Justin Jefferson was not heavily recruited. Right? He made
That's
himself.
his story. That is his story, yeah.
Into Justin Jefferson. He was a local kid who didn't get any offers anywhere else except to LSU for top tier programs. That was it. That was all he got. And then other players, they never get offers to these top tier schools, or they ultimately get to go to their dream school, but only once they were super productive at Pitt, then you can transfer to USC.
You had to prove it. Correct.
But it's like a stepping stone, right? That's why whenever a guy transfers to a less competitive school, it's always a huge red flag.
He couldn't outcompete the guys there. We've seen that a number of times where they take a step back in competition. One that comes to mind recently is Bailey Zappi. Remember him? He went to Western Kentucky after he couldn't hack it at a bigger program. That happens. But also, we're talking about guys who can achieve despite a lot of the odds. I think at Dynasty Week, we had Dynasty Week a couple weeks ago. My flag plant player in the rookie draft was Tank Dell, because I think that this guy has tried he had to become a technician. He had to work his ass off, Matt, to continually get better. And now we're talking about a guy who was the best route runner in the class. We're talking about a kid who had 2,600 receiving yards over his last 2 years at Houston, a D1 program, and a guy that was hand-selected, begged their number 2 overall pick, CJ Stroud, begged the Houston Texans to take this guy. That's why he was my plant the flag player, because he has a lot of similar qualities to the Jordan Addisons, the Devontae Smiths, these guys who learned to win when they didn't have the God-given talent.
Right, and that is the least risky player to select in a rookie draft. Time and time again, if you're able to produce, think about Devontae Smith. He's able to produce Heisman Trophy level production without any natural, obvious, explosive ability, without having the size to box out defenders, without having the speed to just accelerate away from people down the field. Right? That's such a crutch for most players. And then when they get to a place where, oh wow, everyone's on my level now, I don't have the technical skills to figure out how to solve this problem. Right? This problem of how do I gain separation now that everyone's at my level of athleticism? And that's that list. That's the list of players that I laid out, from Jalen Strong to Miles Boykin to Stephen Hill to John Baldwin to Hakeem Bustler. They got to the NFL, and I promise you, it was the first day of camp where they realized it. I can guarantee a large number of people on this list. Kevin White is a great example. Josh Doxson. I promise you, they went home after the first day of camp with the full roster, the first day of actual camp, and they probably felt awful. They probably felt demoralized because they were like, wait a second, what am I going to do? I'm no longer the biggest, fastest, most explosive guy on the field. And that's why it's great to go look at the tape. And I'm not a tape guy. I'm not a tape
You're not
guru,
a tape guy, no.
Right?
No.
But it's fun to watch a Quentin Johnston in one screen and then have the Jordan Addison screen up next to him. And so you can see, oh, wait, look at this guy. Look at how he's winning. This guy's winning with yak, but the yak wasn't even like agility. It was the fact that he stiff-armed a guy.
Yeah.
Right? He stiff-armed a guy in the face mask. And what was that guy? When you actually look at that guy, wait, he was a 5'9" corner that runs a 4'7", a guy that would never face in the NFL. He would never face that guy in the NFL. So what is he doing? He's pancaking and running over a non-NFL defensive back in order to make the production that is driving the Dominator rating. That's not replicatable at the next level, right? Just like what N'Keal Harry did, taking those screen passes and stiff-arming a guy and getting 12 yards at Arizona State. When they tried to do that with him, with the Patriots, that's a 2-yard gain. You've seen those.
He was tackled short. Remember the game when he reached out for the touchdown? He was a yard short, a half a yard short, because he couldn't get through that arm tackle. It's a different beast.
He couldn't separate either.
He can't.
Right? He could not separate, and it doesn't matter in college. If you're 225 pounds and you have above average burst, you're going to be able to find separation no problem. But all of a sudden, that's what I'm saying. And N'Keal Harry, I'm sure he went back to his house after the first full camp day in New England, and I don't know. I don't know N'Keal Harry. I'm sure he's a fantastic person. I'm sure he loves his family. I'm sure his family loves him. He's a great guy, but he probably cried. He probably wept. No, I'm not, because like, you think about it, your whole world is now in doubt.
What
like
you think
everything you knew was, I'm always the biggest, fastest, most explosive playmaker, and I don't necessarily need to put in the work to become a technician. And then the day when the realization hits you that that's not going to be good enough at whatever the next level of your profession is, that's a super demoralizing moment.
It is, but I would say this to Mr. N'Keal Harry. At least you didn't have to deal with a solar flare in the biggest moment of your content creating life. You're just dealing with behemoths that you can't get open from. But a solar flare, that's cosmic, Matt. That was cosmic.
Right. Yeah. And so what do the Quentin Johnston fans have to fall back on? Well, they'll give you fake comps that are 20-year outliers, like Anquan Bolden.
Incredible outliers. They'll give you.
So they'll say, okay, wait, we preach don't chase outliers, and then what do? They chase outliers that are literally every 20 years, 20-year solar flare. That's not even comparable, right? So again, that's not even a comparison, because Anquan Bolden actually had to learn how to be a technician in a way that Quentin Johnston never will. So that argument is in the dustbin. Now, another argument that is easy to put in the dustbin is this notion that, oh, Justin Herbert will force feed him, don't worry. This is the fallacy you hear over and over. This is in the chat. The Fantasy Football Ninja. It's like, I love the chat because sometimes I feel like I'm throwing straw man arguments out there. Like, okay, this is what people will probably say, or this is what I've seen. Trust me, I've seen this, even though I can't prove it. The beauty of having the chat in front of us and doing this live, Matty, is we have these fools like the Fantasy Football Ninja. And I say fool because they don't learn from history. And they don't realize that you know how many people have said this exact thing about bust wide receivers over the last 10 years. And it's never true. It's never true that player X or stud quarterback Y can just force feed volume to a player. It's not possible, because I heard that was going to happen with Kevin White because he was a top 10 pick. And I heard that about Tavon Austin because he was a top 10 pick. I heard that because these, and again, Quentin Johnston, not a top 10 pick, but with these bust top 10 picks, I've heard all along that they don't worry, they will be force fed volume because they're a top 10 pick. But the problem is if you actually put yourself in the shoes, what I'm saying is, let's be real about what it's like through youth football on up for a player like Quentin Johnston versus a player like Jordan Addison to develop. Let's actually, day by day, let's talk about that process. Okay? So now let's put ourselves in the real life shoes of real life football players. I'm a quarterback. I'm going back. Again, I'm Herbert, okay, and I've got a big arm,
Let's
right?
Go.
Right, and I'm back. I'm dropping back, right? I'm dropping back. I'm surveying the field. Quentin Johnston, again, not able to get any separation because on this particular play, we didn't scheme him, right? This play wasn't designed to get three people in front of Quentin Johnston so that he could bubble out and take a pass with a -2 air yards so we could get the ball in his hands and then watch him try to stiff arm a guy unsuccessfully to get that 1.5 yards. Right? So that, no, it wasn't that play. This was another play that wasn't called specifically to get the ball to Quentin Johnston. I'm going to be looking at Quentin Johnston for a moment, see that he's completely gobbled up and smothered.
They call that gloved.
And I'm immediately going to pivot to the next guy. So explain to me how the volume ends up going to Quentin Johnston. By the way, this is how Jalen Guyton outproduces Quentin Johnston this year. Is that on any given play, see, if I'm in real life, what happens is I'm Justin Herbert and I'm the franchise. I'm a $500 million player. And I go to the coaches after practice, or I go to the coaches after a game and I say, can you knock it off? I don't give a shit when we drafted this guy. I'm a $500 million guy. I want to be able to have a throw window. You keep having this guy out here just eating routes that are unproductive. He's not even fast enough to stretch the field. He runs a 4.5. At least give me a guy I can launch up a prayer to that has some probability of being connected on in Jalen Guyton.
And I want to add one more thing to the theory of he will be peppered with a lot of targets. If you go to playerprofile.com and you click on the world famous draft kit, if you haven't got that already, get over there and get it now. It's the best draft kit on planet Earth. You can look up the Chargers offensive depth chart, the starting lineup right now. Keenan Allen is still there, Matt. Mike Williams is still there. Gerald Everett is still there. Josh Palmer, who has been he's the middest of mid receivers, but he's been reliable for Justin Herbert, is still there, Mr. Kelley. Where does Quentin Johnston push these guys aside? Keenan Allen is a pro's pro. You're not taking targets from Keenan Allen. Mike Williams, they gave $60 million to just a year ago. You're not taking targets away from Mike Williams. Where are the targets going to come from? Where is this kid going to see 70, 80 targets? I don't see it in year one, and it may never come.
At least if he ran a 4.35, at least if he were Brashad Perriman, there would be the argument that he could be a field stretcher, that he could at least make life easier for Keenan Allen, for Justin Herbert, for everybody.
Brings
even for Josh Palmer, right? He could at least have a role, a functional role on the team. And this is the great mistake of drafting a guy like this in the first round, is that you're potentially getting absolutely nothing from him. Like not even
Right.
function. Like even Tavon Austin had gadget like threat.
He had game-breaking speed. Whether he could do it in the NFL was always the question. Didn't
Right.
happen.
You put him out
but
there,
he
he
had
run.
that speed.
If you put him in motion, the defense has to pay attention to Tavon
Mhm.
Austin in motion.
Of course.
For a guy that runs a 4.5, and the beauty is, I've read the scouting reports on Quentin Johnston, and you know the two attributes that they talk about when they talk about his speed. Can I tell you the attributes?
I'd love to hear it, Matt. I'd love to hear
He
it.
has football speed. Okay, this is a dead giveaway. Football speed, and he also has deceptive speed. That's
So
a
it's not
player
fair.
that you like. So when you like a player who's not fast, but he has great burst and he breaks tackles, what you ultimately will say is, well, that's football speed. That's
deceptive speed.
That's deceptive.
Matt,
that's
I don't know if you know this, but I have
that-
deceptive
It's
six-pack.
deceptive because you see him pulling away from slow corners.
Yeah.
So that's the deception. But guess what? Those corners don't exist in the NFL.
No, in his division especially. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Pat Surtain. There's going to be some monsters in that defensive, the cornerbacks for his division alone. He's not going to win against those guys. But, I mean, we're going to talk about deceptive things here. I think
It's
I'm
so
going to
funny.
use that,
People
Matt.
say,
Is that
oh, the
okay?
Guyton take was too far. The Guyton take was too far.
Was that too far? Well,
No, it's not too far. Remember,
you've always been a
Jacoby
Guyton
Myers,
guy, too.
the undrafted Jacoby Myers, crushed N'Keal Harry. They were both rookies. One from NC State, undrafted. The other, a first-round pick.
Mhm.
Okay? One guy utterly destroyed the other in year one production, right? And anyone that said that was even a possibility in June, July would have sounded foolish, right? That's a foolish take. That's too far. Okay, now you've lost me. You've lost me. No. When wide receivers like Kevin White bust, it's epic. They can't see the field. Josh Doxson didn't play. They can't, there's no what I'm saying is this is an archetype with no functional ability where it's wide receiver 4 is their ceiling. And again, if you're the quarterback, why would you want, what would be the point of Quentin Johnston out there over Jalen Guyton?
Schematically, there's no benefit for the quarterback. There's no benefit. We've talked about it, Matt. We've talked about exactly why Quentin Johnston has all the bust signals written all over him. We've talked about it, and I kind of felt it this whole way. I remember when you guys were, Senior Bowl, there was some rumblings there that he didn't have that dog in him, and then the combine came and the pro day came.
Whoa, Quentin Johnston wasn't at the Senior Bowl.
No, but I'm talking about in that time of the year, right before the combine, the rumblings were starting. That he didn't have that dog in him. With you, Alex, Cody, you guys had your shows that you would do daily at the Senior Bowl talking about those kids, but it would come up. The reports started coming up that Quentin Johnston didn't have that dog in him. His pro day wasn't good. I mean, Alex Dunlap was there. Alex Dunlap of Roster Watch, a friend of Player Profiler. He was there, and he said it was an absolute train wreck. He said he sucked at his pro day. He didn't have any dog in him. So,
well, that's the thing. I think you're conflating two things. I think that he had a terrible pro day because I think he dropped passes at his pro day, and it was embarrassing. Because if you're playing against air and you're dropping passes, that becomes a red flag where drops in a normal football game, there's going to be drops. You have great players that lead the league in drops, right?
Every year, yeah.
Right, but dropping passes in college is a different beast. Right? That's more problematic than dropping passes in the NFL. Where we have Brandon Marshall leading the league in drops. They're not as predictive, but they are a red flag at the college level, no question about it.
Right.
And when you're a sloppy route runner and you're not able to connect against air at a pro day, that's a giant red flag. Okay, so that's one red flag. The other red flag was at the combine. In the interview process, we heard that that scouts had him rated poorly with the mentals. So whatever that is, that's how fast can you pick up the playbook, right? That's your level of competitive fire, like whatever it is, right? That that would help your dog rating. That's what those guys do at the combine. That's what Alex and Cody and those guys, what they do. They talk to the scouts that are in the room during the interview process, and they get a sense of whether players are acing the interview or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you start to hear some funny stories about how George Pickens freaked some scouts out in the interview process because he was too intense. And then you're like, well, that's a new one, right? That's a unique, nuanced
he had too
thing.
much dog in
Like,
him.
is that
Too much
actually
pitbull.
good? Like, is it cool that he's got a ski mask on during the draft?
Watching himself get drafted. He has the
I actually
shiesty
don't
on.
mind that. Like, to me, I thought that was cool, but that's in the eye of the beholder. But when a player is just meek during that process, that's when it's sort of a universally known thing that they just don't seem to have the competitive fire during the process, during the drills, during the interviews, for whatever it is. And again, what we see is time and time again, it's these guys that were born with all that natural ability. They're more likely to be less competitive and just glide on athleticism. They're the gliders, right? Whereas if you don't have that, like I said, my daughter is much more likely than some of these more explosive playmakers to like grab someone's wrist and like hold it down and like pull on them during a game.
They got the gamesmanship. She's got that. That's that dog. That's that you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But what she's not going to outrun them, so that she's found other ways to do it. She's found other ways to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She's found creative ways to solve the problem.
The
where if you never have to use that part of your ability, that creative problem solving, because you can always just glide past everybody, that's never something you're going to learn. And it's like I said, it's years. We talked about this at the beginning. It's years to develop that level of passion.
It's a grind, Matt. It's a grind.
Especially if you're not naturally inclined to be good at that particular sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole other level. So when a player has proven that they've been through that and they've come out on the other end, a fully seasoned and polished professional like Jordan Addison, I'll be damned if Jordan Addison busts. Like if Jordan Addison, I'll eat my hat. Like I will.
That hat that you're wearing now?
I have a hat right here. I will eat it. It like, because explain to me how we've seen it time and time. I mean, when a guy comes out with just pure technician abilities and can't elevate to the next level, either he's just way too small or his athleticism is so far down the board that he reaches a ceiling that no matter what your technical abilities are, you can't quite overcome it, right? There is a baseline level of athleticism that these guys need to meet. And Jordan Addison, of course he has that. He ran a sub 4.540.
Mm-hmm.
That's way beyond. I mean, even his agility score was above average. So,
correct.
Like, when you have a Deontay Johnston type player who can just put these guys on skates, that's why I love the Tank Dell reference. Because at the Senior Bowl, Tank Dell was putting everyone on skates every single play. You want to do another comparison? Do a comparison of watching Quentin Johnston and Tank Dell in college. Right. One guy is impossible to cover laterally. It's just you'll never be able to keep up with him. I mean, these were the best corners in Senior Bowl history.
Yes,
were the 2023 cornerback class.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
It was incredible. Like, think about how many corners got drafted in the first couple rounds. I mean, a lot of them were
incredible
seniors.
talents.
Incredible.
Great questions you asked, by the way, in Mobile, too. Are you being stunted by how good the quarterbacks were? The reactions that you got in those interviews was awesome. That was hilarious. Really
Mingo was like not happy. Mingo was like, get the hell out of here. That made me respect him more. Like that level of intensity. I was like, yeah, I like that.
And the competitiveness. He had that.
Yeah, but I also like it when like a Michael Wilson is just kind of affable and cool about it too. Like both of the reactions were fine. I was fine with all different types of reactions. This is it was a fun question to ask, but Tank Dell is a guy that he may be super impressive in terms of how he has developed and how he's able to get the most out of a player that no one expected to get to this level at the wide receiver position at his size. He may reach a ceiling where it's just impossible, right? It's just impossible for someone that small, someone that's 5'5", they can't play NFL receiver. There's just some physical limitations. But Jordan Addison, I believe, is well beyond that, right? There's no physical limitations to Jordan Addison. I think he's very, very close comparable to Devontae Smith. I think he's a little bit faster.
He's a little bit faster. Yeah, he is.
Than Devontae
sure.
Smith. So I think that's
how he wins is similar.
But in terms of the intuition from seeing these players for so many years, right? If I go back in time, if I went in a time machine, you got to understand this. Like, I'm not proud that if I went in a time machine 8 years ago, I would have preferred Quentin Johnston.
Of course.
You understand that?
We all would have. We would have absolutely been on the same train like we were for John Baldwin, Stephen Hill, all the names on that list.
Well, I wasn't into John Baldwin, but yeah, understood. Yeah, Stephen Hill for sure. And like, I'm not proud, but like, it's called learning, right? It's called improving, right? And then the beauty of people tuning into these shows is they get to hit the fast forward button on their learning. Like, you don't have to learn all these lessons. You don't have to go through all the bad takes. You don't have to rebuild dynasty teams that were ruined by a Stephen Hill,
destroyed
by a
Dorial
Martavis Bryant that I've had to live through in my life. You can take these life's learnings and you can then apply them and make sure you never draft a Quentin Johnston and get as much Jordan Addison as you can possibly handle. Something that I would have never done 5 years ago. I would have laughed. I was like, what are you doing? How could you possibly? Look how explosive this guy is. Look at the upside. What are you doing? You're chasing a floor play in Jordan Addison. Next thing you know, you look up, Jordan Addison's going to catch 100 passes in the league.
Yeah, right. He's going to catch all 107 of the vacated targets for Adam Thielen. I mean, Jordan Addison's that guy. Another maybe not apples to apples. This guy was a little bit faster coming out, but we have now a case study of Tyler Lockett. Remember Tyler Lockett? It took him 3 years to fire. It wasn't until his 4th year in the NFL where he really took off. But because he was a technician, because he was good at football, # good at the sport, he was able to take off, and he's been an absolute monster from 2018 up until last year. So there are outs. There are scenarios when we run when we run the past in our minds, like we're talking about, where a guy like Tyler Lockett could take some time and still burst on the scene. But we don't have any of the Josh Doxsons eventually figuring out. Rashad Perriman's eventually becoming massively fantasy relevant, or any of the names that we're bringing up here. And that is the cautionary tale. That's why Matt and I have been talking about Quentin Johnston and leaving him off. So he is not your guy. He is not my guy. And after this analysis, I don't know how you can be anyone's guy.
I believe I did draft him. I mean, I believe there was a draft where Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison went, and I did need wide receiver. I believe it was in one of our patron leagues. I think I do have a Quentin Johnston. I think I did, and I'm ashamed of it because I didn't appreciate it. Like, it's only now that I've really dug in and done all this research, because I'm rolling out a do not draft video coming out soon. And the level of research that I've done, where I'm like, okay, wow, I had no idea it was this bad with Quentin Johnston. Like, I was willing to say, hey, I want to get a little exposure. You know, I don't want to let Quentin Johnston totally beat me. I want to make sure I have some of it, just at least a sprinkle across my rosters. Now I'm like, I mean, run and hide. Do not touch. do not even smell.
Don't come anywhere near him.
Yeah, like skull and crossbones all over him. Absolutely. Yeah, I would know. Oh God.
As my girls say when I give them food, they don't like. Yeah,
that's really bad. Yeah, and I've got up on the screen here, we've got the fantasy plumber. Now, I just tell you, the fantasy plumber and I do not always agree. The fantasy plumber.
I was on the last time you guys didn't agree. I believe in the Sonic
The fantasy plumber is well known for challenging my takes, and he's the fantasy ball buster, really.
Unclogging the pipes?
Right. So he's a shit talker, this fantasy plumber. So
what do you expect?
whenever we should run this out of it. Whenever we run this with a fantasy plumber, we got always run this. Right. By the way, we're over an hour in. We've talked about one play.
Matt, to be on the Mind the Mansion was a dream come true, but to be on the Mind the Mansion and hear the legendary fart sounder, oh baby, what a Wednesday I'm having, Matty.
The fantasy plumber writes that yak in college is not the same as yak in the NFL. Quentin Johnston is busterific. Well said. Well said. Well said. So on the spectrum of things that you want a guy to be good at, oh wow, look jacked here. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Matt, you were a bigger guy than I expected when we hung out in Kansas City.
Look at this. Look at this. Look at the definition on the biceps. So, no, seriously, I sometimes I shock myself there. So anyway,
good for you.
Yeah, and and just so everybody knows, when I got started, I was talking to another person in radio recently, and they said, "Oh, listen to that radio voice. Listen to that smooth radio voice you got there." And I had to laugh because I'm kind of like my daughter in that when I got started, everyone made fun of my voice. Everyone said my voice was squeaky and generally annoying to listen to, and the dulcet tones were not apparent, and I seemed to have a very low ceiling for my broadcasting abilities. And then what did I do? I just did a show every day. I did a show every day, and I got better, and my voice ended up sounding better. That's why you see some of these guys, they run the 40 in high school, and they run a 4.9 40, and then they show up and they run a 4.5 at the combine. How the hell does a Justin Jefferson and a Jordan Mattison do that? They just put the work in, dude. Squats and thrusters, and just keep and you actually can develop explosiveness over time, and get that baseline level of athleticism that none of the college recruiters thought was possible, which is amazing. So again, just on pure ability, you can do yak stuff. Right. So on the one end of the spectrum, I have yak, which I don't give a shit about. Right. Yak production in college. But the Breakout Finder puts a big premium on dynamic score, which looks at rushing yards and special teams production. Okay. And do you know who the special teams king was? And if I had the Breakout Finder when Cooper Kupp came out, I wish, right? Because his special teams production at Eastern Washington was epic, and I would have never even thought about suggesting drafting a Mike Williams,
Corey Davis
over Cooper Kupp. I would have seen through Corey Davis. Right, and I would have wanted Cooper Kupp had that happened, but I didn't at the time. Again, I fell for it. I was a Corey Davis guy.
Yeah,
right?
Me too. Big time.
I probably would have still preferred Juju over all those guys because Juju had that early breakout age at a major conference, and so I doubt even with a time machine. With a limited time machine. Well, I can't know everything, but if I could at least bring the Breakout Finder algorithm back in a time machine, if not, but not have all the information, I still would have preferred Juju, but I would have had a much more of appreciation for Cooper Kupp.
Right.
Can you just by chance guess how much special teams or rushing production Quentin Johnston had in college?
I'm going to say it's less than 50 total yards in his full collegiate career.
Well, the beauty is we have the data here. So I think he had less than 10 carries in his entire collegiate career, right. Which is weird, right? Which is weird because they're telling us that the scouts are telling us, hey, this guy's like a running back with a ball in his hands. And if he's a running back with a ball in his hands, why not just give him carries? Is it because he doesn't have the lateral quickness to play running back that his agility score is 1159, which is worse than some linemen? Right, 1159 agility score is painfully low. I mean, it's gross.
Bad.
It's really rough. And at no point did TCU ever say, go return punts, go return kicks. You're great out in space, making people miss. No, they never did that because he has stiff arms for the yak. That's fine. But the more creative, sort of good at football skills that are required to be productive, especially as a punt returner, zero.
Nilch.
Zero.
No, you're not going to find
no special teams production whatsoever. And the yards per reception went down every year. As the targets went up, the yards per reception went down for Quentin Johnston. So it was nothing but red flags up and down the profile. Woof. I can't believe we've talked about him for over an hour.
Well, listen, you get a couple of jabberjaws like, us together. If we are passionate about something, we want to start talking about something, we're going to talk about it, Mr. Kelley. We're going to go.
But it's not just about him, though. And this is what I like about the game plan show that you do, is you have the chalkboard. You're about, hey, these are enduring lessons for becoming a better fantasy player. That's what we're doing. We're like, hey, you're going to stumble upon a Quentin Johnston a year from now, 2 years from now, every year. And we want you to know this is the type of player you need to run and hide from every time. And don't listen to these people in the chat that are like, no, this time is different. Oh, no, this time you're taking an L. Oh, no, this time this is a bad take. Oh, you watch. Oh, you watch. You're going to be proven wrong.
We just gave you an hour why we're not, I think, Matt, is what we can say. And I also want to say this. I want to thank you, Matt. Because now I will forever be tied to Mr. Matt Kelley when it comes to the demise of the fantasy value of Quentin Johnston. And we can stand and celebrate together. So I want to thank you for that, Mr. Kelley. That was nice.
It's already happening, by the way. It's already happening. In the Scott Fish Bowl, who's in the Scott Fish Bowl? It's populated by a lot of quality analysts, but even more important, typically the winners are the fantasy players. There's fantasy gamers, serious fantasy gamers, and analysts. And the reason why the fantasy gamers typically beat the analysts is because a lot of analysts just get into the Scott Fish Bowl because they work at a website, not because they're good, right? But most of the actual fantasy players are in there because they're good because they take it seriously.
They're getting good at
I happen to be in a pretty difficult division. Like I'm in with Greg Sussman, Andrew Dinkmeyer, and Jared Smola from Draft Sharks, who's also in our draft kit. He breaks down a player in the draft kit. Did a great job. Our draft kit's amazing. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. We've got 50 plus of the industry's top analysts, the good ones, break down players. And their analysis is actually embedded in the cheat sheets. And Billy has his cheat sheet. Dario and Theo have cheat sheets that you can download, their personal cheat sheets as well. So in this particular draft room, I had an opportunity to draft Quentin Johnston multiple times after Njigba and Addison went off the board. So when Njigba and Addison went off the board in round 9, guess who drafted Njigba and Addison? Guess who, Matty? Guess who?
I'm going to guess you drafted them.
I drafted Njigba and Dinkmeyer drafted Addison.
I also drafted Addison in Scott Fish Bowl. So Dinkmeyer and I are on the same page here. I like that.
Because all four of us, focus on the right details. And then after that, I had plenty of opportunity to draft Quentin Johnston. I didn't. I drafted Rashad Bateman. Then I had another opportunity to draft him, and I didn't. I drafted Elijah Moore. Because when you zoom out, Elijah Moore's profile is a lot more similar to guys like Tyler Lockett than all these busts that we talked about that are comp to Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston didn't get drafted until the 13th round. 4 rounds later, he went after the other 2 rookies, the early rookies, the better rookies, the elite rookies.
And we were talking at the top of the show, he was drafted after Romeo Dobbs in this league, which should tell you everything you need to know.
He was drafted after Dobbs. He was drafted after Jimmy Garoppolo. He was drafted after Rashad Penny. He was drafted after Jawan Johnson. He was drafted after Gabriel Davis. He was drafted after Baker Mayfield and Tank Bigsby and Jerick McKinnon and even Zay Flowers, the other first-round wide receiver. He was the last, though he wasn't the last drafted in the first round, he was the second wide receiver drafted. He was the last first-rounder to actually be selected in the Scott Fish Bowl, though he's on the Chargers, which imbues huge upside, huge theoretical upside, but upside is not theoretical. Upside is actual. You can measure it. And the people in this draft room can measure upside. And they did that. And then they said, no thank you to Quentin Johnston.
Hit the buzzer. No thanks. Move on. He went in the 11th in our Scott Fish Bowl division, which was, it's in kind of that lockstep of where he's going, I think, in a lot of those leagues. But still too early for me. He did go ahead of Elijah Moore in my league. He went ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster, Zay Flowers. I can't be doing that for all the reasons we talked about. We talked about it now. Yeah, let's go. Give me all the sounders, baby.
I did. I gave you 3 wrong answers in a row there. That was pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. How's your team so far in Scottfish? You liking it?
I like it. I mean, it's coming together. I went heavily zero RB. We need to talk about zero RB, you and me, because I think zero RB is back. It's only back because no one's doing it, no one's talking about it, except a handful of people that know what they're doing and focus on the right details, so that when really smart people are like, hey guys, don't forget about zero RB. I know you've moved on. And I'm like, wow, has there ever been a better time to do zero RB? And it's like, well, yeah, but wide receivers getting pushed up, right? This is where you got to zig. No. You don't zig and zag, right? You don't zig when everyone zags. That's a common misperception. A lot of times you just want to go with what the market is telling you are the prices. If you need elite receivers, then you need to pay elite receiver prices. And if elite receivers aren't available in round 3 because they're all getting pushed up into the first 2 rounds, the answer isn't go running back and end up with no elite receivers. The answer is, follow the market, make sure you're in line with the market to get your receivers you need to get. And if it happens to be you got to get them in round 1, 2, 3, then you got to get them in round 1, 2, 3. In the Scott Fish Bowl, I was like, I'm going to get Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb level receivers. I have 2. I have Chase and I have Lamb. So I at least have 2 super elite receivers. Not because of the scoring. The scoring doesn't favor receivers. It favors the other positions because you get bonuses for carries, bonuses for first downs, and there's a double bonus for tight ends. But to me, that's a reason to get elite receivers, because if they're not getting any help, you're not going to get any production out of that position unless you get the super elite guys, right? Where if you do happen to draft like a Tyler Conklin, he's going to perform like a top 36 wide receiver anyway. You don't need to necessarily draft him early because the bonus helps the late round tight ends as much as it helps the early round tight ends.
Correct.
So just because the scoring favors the tight end position doesn't mean you chase tight ends. Now, it can be so skewed that you're almost obliged to draft Travis Kelce. If he's a first-round pick anyway, and they're going to double his production, of course Travis Kelce's the 101 in this format, of course. Right? But then once you get past Travis Kelce, it becomes an open question. And if you're going to go tight end, he's got to have Kelce level ability. That's why the guy that I drafted my first tight end was George Kittle, because he actually does have if things break right for him. If there's especially if Deebo Samuel misses games during the fantasy playoffs, then we're talking about potentially Kelce level production for George Kittle. So that's the case for Kittle, and so I ended up investing in quarterback early, wide receiver early, tight end early, and then punting running back, because you have to make a decision in a Superflex format, especially a Superflex format that's tight end premium. You cannot have it all. You have to decide, of one of these 4 positions, I'm going to be weak because you can't face a 4-front war.
Right.
Right?
We talked
tried
about this
this.
yesterday.
We
Yes.
saw this. World War II,
Yes.
they tried it. Germany tried it. Right? And actually, I saw Theo tried it.
Theo
the
tried
great
it,
Theo
The
Greminger.
OG, man. The OG.
Yeah, he went
Trying to have
quarterback.
it all.
He went super balanced quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, tight end. He went super balanced in the Scott Fish Bowl. And I said, I mean, regardless of the players you drafted, Theo, because it's Superflex tight end premium, I generally see this as a mistake because in this format, you're better off. It's more optimal to choose a position that you take swings on late as opposed to just going balanced across the board. You end up being strong at nothing, right? So I told Theo, I think he went full Hitler. Theo went full Hitler.
Never go full Hitler.
No, you never go full Hitler.
You never do it.
You never go full Hitler. He's opening up fronts in Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, North Africa. I'm like, you can't do it, dude. You can't fight all those battles. You got to pick your battles in Superflex, especially Superflex tight end premium. You can never go full Hitler like Theo did. And so I said, you know what? I like a lot of these running backs late. I love Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson and Antonio Gibson helped convince me. Like, they brought me together. They like, hey, Matt, get over here. And then Roschon, I was like, what, who? Because these guys were awesome at the Senior Bowl, right? My 2 Senior Bowls, the best running back at the 2020 Senior Bowl was Antonio Gibson. The best running back at the 2023 Senior Bowl was Roschon Johnson. So these 2 guys, they brought me, they took me aside. I said, hey, Matt, this is the year. 0 RB in the Scott Fish Bowl. You could draft us. We're in the double-digit rounds. And I was like, okay, guys, they convinced me. So Gibson, Gainwell, Hubbard, Roschon, Jerome Ford, right? There's so many options.
Right. These are the quintessential 0 RB guys. And the reason why, after seeing a team like yours, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, that gets you going, right? That's a nice little early 1 receiver, 2 receiver pickup here. A thing that makes the 0 RB kind of nice in this format is all the running backs are getting pushed up. So you're able to capitalize on value as those running backs pushed up. And one of the quintessential properties of 0 RB when it is done successfully is you're not banking on the scoring, you're banking on the injuries. You're banking on the role changes. You're banking on Roschon Johnson becoming a bell cow later. You're banking on an injury to Nick Chubb where Jerome Ford now becomes that dude. So the 0 RB strategy is great when the injuries play to your favor, but in the Scott Fish Bowl especially, you're seeing an inflated price on all of these running backs, which is going to give you these nice little pockets of value as you're seeing guys pushed up. So I think
right. So everyone gets their running backs early, and then you are by yourself, right?
Just
it's like there's a rush to the grocery store, right? There's a rush to the grocery store because there's a storm coming, and everyone gets all the stuff, but they rush to the grocery store that morning, and then you show up an hour before close. The storm is literally rolling in, and you're alone in the grocery store just getting whatever running backs you want. So in that zone of the draft, it was like do you want Chuba Hubbard? Yeah, Chuba Hubbard's by himself behind Miles Sanders. He's going to be a bell cow if Miles Sanders misses time. Jerome Ford will be a bell cow if Miles Sanders misses time. Keontae Ingram looks like a bell cow if James Conner misses time. And so you have those types of running backs that you can draft. The other type of running back that you can draft is the running back that's in an ambiguous backfield where they could emerge. So I believe that the Vikings backfield is not settled yet. I think training camp is going to have something to say, and Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride are going to have something to say about the touch distribution in this Vikings backfield. That's why I desperately wanted either Ty Chandler or Dwayne McBride. And then, of course, Drew Dinkmeyer, right?
Dink.
Right,
Gotcha.
you got Chandler. So I didn't get all the running backs I wanted. I didn't get Chandler, but I did get Dwayne McBride. I want to take a shot. I want some share of that Vikings backfield. Could be McBride, could be Chandler. It's not going to be Nwangu, and Nwangu's a special teamer. And Nwangu will be on the active roster, and it's what's going to requires some patience for those of us that are drafting McBride. You're going to have to wait a couple weeks because I think it's going to be a game day inactive because they're going to want to have Nwangwu in there active.
They need him, yeah.
And then you're going to have to wait for a flame out or an injury to either Mattison or Chandler. But when McBride gets his opportunity, he's the best runner on this team. He is the best runner. And I think that you look at that backfield, Alexander Mattison is not the best at anything in that backfield. He is actually the worst of all those running backs because Nwangwu is a plus in the special teams game.
Mm-hmm.
Chandler is a plus in the receiving game.
And he's fast.
McBride, looking at his prolific running and tackle breaking in college, looks like a plus in the running game. He looks like a plus between the tackles. McBride is a better runner, a better pure runner than Alexander Mattison. So there's nothing that Alexander Mattison does the best, even in that backfield, a backfield that looks hollowed out. They've moved on from Dalvin Cook. How could you possibly say that Mattison is the best at nothing? Well, because it's measurably true. It's measurably there's much more explosive upside in the passing game for Chandler, and McBride was one of the more dominant college runners we've seen in years, and everyone knows Nwangwu is one of the better kickoff and punt return specialists in the NFL. This is all well known. So someone explain to me, other than maybe, okay, I'll give you one thing. I'll give you pass blocking. Right? Okay, pass blocking.
Deceptive speed. Football speed, Matt, right? We talked about that earlier. Football speed.
I'm sorry. I'll give you pass blocking. And I should have said activities that can find a way to somehow score a fantasy point. Right? Fantasy production relevant skills. Okay. He's the best at none. Okay. But maybe, yes, from a organizational trust standpoint, which is why they brought him back and they paid him the bare minimum, and why he's going to start on day one is because they do trust him not to get Kirk Cousins killed. Okay. That's his greatest trait. That's the best thing he has going for him, is that Kirk Cousins trusts him to be in the right place to pick up blitzes.
Right.
That's the number one. That's his number one skill for the organization.
Do you lend any credence to his ability to? He did put up fantasy points in Dalvin Cook's absence. How much of a leash does the Vikings give him? Because we talked about Chandler being faster and better in the passing game. McBride had 3,000 rushing yards over his last 2 years at UAB. He's really a prolific rusher coming out of college. How long is that leash, though, Matt? How long do you think that they let Mattison go out there because he's done it for the Vikings in the past?
I don't think it's going to be their call. He runs to contact too much.
He's not fast. He doesn't really bring any of that athleticism to the table.
There's going to be he's going to have separated rib cartilage. He's going to broken clavicle, high ankle sprain. These guys that run to contact, they don't last a full season. He's not agile enough, and he runs to contact too much, where that's sustainable in a 2-game sample, right? But
correct. Yeah, that makes sense. Right.
The running backs that endure in the NFL, they have the lateral quickness to get out of bounds. They have the explosiveness to get by defenders and get out of bounds. They just don't take the level of punishment, right? That an Alexander Mattison being so slow and just not offering anything beyond baseline level athleticism. That's the funny thing is burst and overall athleticism is so much more predictive for running backs than receivers. That's
right. That makes
one of the great insights in my history in this business is that. Because again, when I'm sitting at home watching the NFL, I'm thinking the thing that requires the most athleticism is wide receiver. But by the numbers, right? The athleticism can be a big differentiator and limiting factor for running backs much more often and to a much greater degree than wide receivers. So that's why when a running back goes out and runs a 4.7, I'm out. I'm gone. Right?
That's
Get
the end
out of
deal.
here.
Right. That's the
No, I mean,
Where's
I'm
the sign?
not. You run a 4.6, run a 4.7, I'm out. Like, you know, right?
Yeah.
No, thank you. Not happening. So that's why it's like, okay, Alexander Mattison was never a player. I don't have any of him except in one league, I got him as a throw-in, and I need him badly. In this one league, it was a famous trade I did with Cody in a Dynasty league, and then Cody left the league.
You told me. I think you brought this up when you came on the game plan. We talked about this.
Yeah, he traded me his first rounder for a bunch of quarterbacks in a Superflex league, and those quarterbacks were Wentz and Mayfield, and he had no quarterback, and he was desperate. So we gave him his first round pick, and that first round pick ended up being the 101. And then the throw-in that deal was Mattison, and I just held on to him. So, whoops. Sorry, Cody, man. That trade worked out. You're not in the league anymore, Cody. It doesn't matter. It won't bother you at all. You're gone.
Matt, can I give you another name?
Like, if that happens to you, do you blame Cody? Like, if that happens to you and you trade for Carson Wentz, and
I've been in that situation.
Yeah, did you stay with it? Did you try to rebuild from there? That's a damn difficult task to rebuild from there.
I have, and it's not successful yet. I'm still trying. So I understand that when you take a gamble like that, it makes for a big hole if it doesn't come to, the ball doesn't bounce your way. But Matt, can I give you one other running back that I think people listening should target late in these drafts?
Please.
Who checks the boxes. It's a guy who has a 96 percentile 40-yard dash and also a 96 percentile speed score. It's someone that we've actually heard in the reports. A little bit of a drumbeat is getting behind Zamir White.
That's it. Dude, this was a big decision I made. This was a big decision. Listen to this. I was between Chuba, Ty Chandler, and Zamir White in round 17 in the Scott Fish Bowl. It was so tough. And then guess what? I called Theo. Theo.
The OG.
Right? I called him because he knows, man. He's in so many. Theo is such a volume drafter with high stakes.
Oh, yeah.
And he laid it out to me. He's like, listen, man, Chuba has the size, the speed, the pass catching ability to be a total bell cow. There's no one behind him. Raheem Blackshear, right? This is a team that wants to run the ball. They have one of the better run blocking offensive lines. And Miles Sanders isn't like a picture of health or a player that the organization is going to demand get bell cow touches on day one. So Chuba could have week one functional value in fantasy just strictly as the satellite back, right? As a satellite back with size where he's at least going to be in there on third downs and he can give you 10 points even in week one. But then his contingent upside, if Miles Sanders misses games, right? And before last year, Miles Sanders was known as always being banged up.
For sure.
Right, always. His ankles were famously
Poodle ankles, I think it was called.
Yeah,
shredded ankles. The jokes are there.
Right. Yeah. So famously weak ankles. So
just like Alan Soslowski is famous now for his bike riding abilities, or
famous long scrotum. Right. So
Alan long scrotum Soslowski, baby. Yeah.
Weak ankle, long scrotum, same gist. So it's like, Theo lays it out and he's like, I love players like Jerome Ford, like Chuba Hubbard, where there's so many of these handcuff backs are overrated because if they do get an opportunity, they're going to be falling right into a specialist backfield. So if there's an injury in front of this guy, it's going to be a specialist backfield. So it's not what you think it is, right? Even with Ty Chandler, right? If Alexander Mattison misses games, guess what? Ty Chandler is going to be the Lightning and McBride's going to be the Thunder.
Right.
That's what's going to happen.
No question, right.
So the contingent value on Chandler isn't as high as it is with Chuba. So that was his argument there. And then same thing with Zamir White. That Zamir White's going to be the Thunder on a bad team if Josh Jacobs misses time, and Josh Jacobs never misses time. So that's a problem. And always holding out. But guess what? They're finding these guys 40, 50 grand per day of missed training camp. So he's not going to hold out for long. So we know Josh Jacobs will be back. He's not going to miss any games. Zamir White gets an opportunity. It's going to be between the tackles with Amir Abdullah as the satellite back. So the contingent upside on Zamir White isn't as high. With Ty Chandler, it isn't as high. But with Chuba, it's bell cow back for one of the better running teams in the league. So that was the argument that he laid out to me, which is why I went Chuba over those guys. But to me, I was like, I actually had it reversed. I had it Chandler, Zamir White, Chuba before I talked to Theo.
And OG, just set you straight, let you know the deal.
Regardless, though, the Zamir White call is very good because Zamir White blazes, and he is going to get dump off. So it's going to be 60-40 Zamir White should Josh Jacobs miss time. Zamir White was a 4th-round pick in an era when most running backs fall out of day 1 and 2. And he was a college football hero for a national championship Georgia team. So you could just see it. It's so easy to see Zamir White getting an opportunity at some point and thriving on breakaway runs and in the red zone. That's where he's going to score a lot of his fantasy points. But on this particular roster, my challenge is going to be the week 1 production. So with 0 RB, you got to be careful. You can't just take all pure handcuffs. I think between Gainwell and Gibson, I'm going to get enough production in week 1, or Gibson and Hubbard. I think if I made a mistake, it was not getting week 1 production from more than Antonio Gibson. My other hope is that Roshan earns a significant role in week 1. That's very much possible. So I have outs here.
That's where my brain went, actually, too.
Yeah, I have outs here. So if I could go back and maybe do things differently, and we're looking at lessons learned, probably should have drafted a Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert just to get a couple weeks of production and then load up on these handcuffs. Going all pure handcuff running backs, all Keontae Ingram types, was a strategic blunder.
Okay. Was that like a little bit of an aha moment for you? So that next year when you would deploy the 0 RB strategy, if that's the route you go, grab yourself a guy that can be your starter week 1, 2, 3, as those other guys start shaking loose from their either situations or injuries occur. I think that's a pretty good point to bring up.
You know a guy I'm going to draft next if he's available, because I think he does have week 1 production potential, is Joshua Kelley.
Okay, let me hear. I want to elaborate.
The Chargers are not going to want to feed Austin Eckler, the 200-pound Austin Eckler, like they did in years past. I believe that Austin Eckler himself has come out and said, "Please, for the love of God, give me a breather back. I need a breather back. Right. You're using me up. This is a Super Bowl team. They don't want to use up in week 1 their stud satellite back plus running back." So I think Joshua Kelley could get out there and get 10 carries in week 1 and potentially score a touchdown, because you've seen some of the most brutal hits that Austin Eckler has taken have been inside the 5-yard line. Where you've seen it where he's laying in the end zone after scoring a touchdown, and it takes him 5-10 seconds to get up, because he takes just a massive spearing hit to the ribs.
Those are the words, and that we talked about that when it comes to Alexander Mattison, the guys that they run to contact. Eckler's not that guy, but when you're in close, it's hard to avoid. It's hard to get out of, what they call it, getting out of a tackle in a phone booth. It's hard to do. Those are the tackles that hurt the most, the ones you score on sometimes. Like you said, he gets up, feeling a little banged up. They're going to want to bring Kelley in. This guy now, his contract, don't forget this, Matt. The contract now is incentive-laden for Austin Eckler to get an increase in pay. He's going to want to play all season. He's going to want to hit those benchmarks, and he's not going to be the guy that's, fighting to get on the field for a 3rd and 1 on the 16. That's not going to be what he's clamoring over anymore. He's going to want to be in the high production, high value spots. He wants those incentives. So Joshua Kelley, not a bad call here. Who the Chargers?
Yeah, but also see, it's going to be hard for him to walk away from Isaiah Spiller. Isaiah Spiller was one of those backs that really helped me better understand the value of going to the combine, because Cody went to the combine and he's like, Isaiah Spiller failed the mentals. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, he doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to be a football player.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear. That's what the scouts are saying. This is what the whisper campaign is at the combine. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Really? The scout whisper campaign. He's like, hey, man, take it for what it's worth. He's failing the mentals. This is not a guy that's wired in a way to take his game to the next level in the NFL, period. And then to see what Isaiah Spiller was, like, because Isaiah Spiller was one of the top prospects, you know, and you had Devy guys drafting him over Breece Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yeah, he was a Devy darling. Absolutely.
Right. So,
no,
and
Isaiah
then,
Spiller,
this guy's a Spiller, and, you know, it's so, you know, big time, you know, high school recruit and all these things. And then all of a sudden we have Noah Hills come on, and he says, Noah Hills is like, hey, listen, guys.
Yes.
This guy's not efficient on a relative basis. These other running backs, A-Chain, all these others, they're blowing him away in various efficiency metrics. And then Cody comes in and says, yeah, he doesn't want to be here. And it's like, okay. Right. And then you see the Chargers again. I feel bad. The Chargers keep drafting these Texas players that don't want to be there, right? They keep falling for it.
100%, Matt. 100%.
I feel bad because they make such great picks, right? They make some of the greatest. Some of their offensive line picks.
Home run.
Herbert was an incredible pick.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When they took Slater, I was like, oh my God, pinch me. Right? They've made some incredible picks. Right. And then like in the first round in particular, they just aced the first round. And then then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second. No, this makes sense. This Quentin Johnston pick makes some sense. This is the same team that drafted Isaiah Spiller. So now it's making a little more sense. Yeah. They're not focusing on the right details, actually. This is not the greatest scouting department. They don't have the great decision-making at the top that you thought maybe they did. So that tells me that in the event that Austin Eckler misses time, which I hope he doesn't, but he could, Joshua Kelley would then be the de facto workhorse because he does have the size. He's 210 pounds. He has the athleticism. He has the pass catching ability. He has just enough of those things, similar to sort of an Alexander Mattison, that he could be the cardboard cutout workhorse if the stud in front of him misses games. So I think that Kelley's probably the sneakiest of these late round guys. And he's the guy I'm targeting because I want that standalone value in week one, where I think he could go out and get 8 to 10 carries. I don't see why not. Again, if I put myself in the shoes of the Chargers, that's a guy I'm going to be giving carries to.
Matt, let me illuminate a little bit about the beginning parts of the schedule for the Chargers. Home against the Dolphins, at Tennessee, at the Minnesota Vikings, home against the Raiders. I could see a lot of points being scored for the Los Angeles Chargers in at least 3 of those contests. So let's just say that Joshua Kelley, we're looking for that miracle touchdown with 10 catches for 80 yards and a touch. There's your bridge. There's your bridge to all the rest of the running backs you've taken.
So do you agree with me with my Superflex strategy that you have to make some choice on what position you're going to be weak at in week one, that you can't have it all? You can't have a forefront war?
I've always kind of drafted that way. So I think you're 100% onto something, because if you want to be elite in something, because you also then a fantasy grind, right? We tend to forget, Matt, that in this part of the year, how chaotic it gets when the bullets are flying, we're in the trenches, and we're just looking for pieces to bridge to the next week. When you have strengths, real strengths, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase type strengths, that's going to cost you somewhere else, right? There's no free lunch here in drafting, so you're going to have to sacrifice something. So I agree. You want to be strong, legitimately strong in a certain facet. And for me in the Scott Fishbowl, I went quarterback and wide receiver. I actually punted tight end over.
That's the other one. That's the other one I considered, and I was going to until Kittle fell to me at the end of the 4th round.
You got to be flexible, correct? Yeah, you got to be
right.
flexible.
So I had to do it. I had to, but otherwise, once I went Kittle, I was like, I might as well go Freiermuth. Right?
Once the levee breaks, now you're trying to build that strength.
That's the thing. Right? So that's the thing. That's the thing. See, if I had not gone Kittle there, I probably would have gone running back when I took Freiermuth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the interesting thing, is that actually because that helped me decide whether I was going to go punt tight end or punt running back. It was going to be one of the two.
And my first tight end was off the board. I took Dalton Schultz in the 9th. When did the levies break for you on running back?
The 9th round.
So we're lockstep in kind of how we're building our team. It's going to look different, but we pushed a certain position back to continue to build our strengths at the other positions.
Correction, 10th round.
Oh,
I took Antonio Gibson at the 10:08. At the 10:08, I was going I was going to go running back at the 9:05, but I believed that a lot of these running backs would still fall. I just had a feeling that Gibson would slip to me one more round. So I decided to wait. The other way I was going to go a running back at the 8:08. So I was going to go Pacheco at the 8:08. Pacheco's the other late round running back that I think you have to get. You're talking about explosive ability. We talk about why explosiveness matters so much for running backs, because that's a key way that running back, there's fewer opportunities for a running back to win with pure technician and tactical ability. A lot of what running backs do is just in the moment explosiveness and in the moment agility, and a lot of just instincts, right? It's not like you can plan ahead for what's going to happen at running back, right? You can't.
Correct. Right. It's all improv. It's jazz, baby.
Yeah, it's a lot more jazz. So that's why the running back, you get a guy that's on the best offense, and he's super explosive, and he's a guy they trusted in the playoffs. Similar case for Kenny Gainwell. So I loved Pacheco at the 8:08, but they forced my hand because Murray was still there. So Kyler Murray in a tournament setting, where if this is a tournament like any kind of sort of a Superflex tournament, an underdog tournament. Underdog has Superflex tournaments. Love Underdog. The problem is, in that particular case, you can't let that guy get by you, right? A guy with a league-winning quarterback, a league-winning, super mobile fantasy quarterback who is going to be healthy for the second half of the year is available at the 8:08. You have to take him. If it was not a tournament, I wouldn't have taken him. If it was a 12-man league, I would not have taken him. But in a tournament setting where you're going up against 2,000 other entries, you got to go Murray there. So I was forced to take Murray as my third quarterback there. And then, of course, Pacheco went 2 picks before my next pick. And then I was deciding, okay, now I want Gibson. Will Gibson make it to me? And I was just like, you know what? People hate Gibson so much. People hate him.
Especially his own coach. His own coach hates him.
They hate him. But he has the pass-catching ability. He has the athleticism, so I just chase that no matter what. Just blinders on to all the noise. Like, does this guy catch passes? Is this guy athletic? Yes. Okay. He also happens to have 2 straight years with 10-plus touchdowns on his resume. He's actually also just a pure fantasy producer, so you love that.
Right.
So I was like, okay, we'll go max upside at wide receivers. That's when I went JSN.
And I want to add one.
So I decided to go JSN basically on the gamble. And again, you're in a tournament setting. You got to take chances, right? I took a chance that I would get Pacheco in round 9. Didn't happen. Then I doubled down. I was like, I'm going to take another chance that Gibson will be there at the 8:08 or the 10:08, and he was.
You made a great choice on Murray. I'll add this too, because he is your get out of jail free card if Kenny Pickett doesn't fire. Now you're talking about later in the season, Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray. Now you have a real perceivable strength at your quarterback position. And getting Tony Gibson in round 10, fantastic move. He's actually one of my guys in Dynasty for all the reasons you mentioned. He can catch passes. He's got the size. He's athletic. He's been a mega producer without necessarily being, his coach's favorite running back. They continue to just shock the world. I think they're trolling us a little bit now at this point, Matt. Have you seen the reports that the coaching staff is echoing? This guy, Tony Gibson, he's pretty good pass catch. I don't know if you guys know that. And the fantasy community is like, you're trolling us.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
You're fucking trolling us, guys, because we have been yelling this out.
NFL coaches and general managers are this dumb. That's why you can't tell me that you like Quentin Johnston because he's a first-round pick, because I just gave you Kevin White, Tavon Austin, Josh Doxson, Devontae Parker, N'Keal Harry, Jalen Reagor. I could talk Corey Coleman, Laquan Treadwell. I can go on and on. I can go on and never stop. I can go on and never, ever, ever, ever stop. So get out of here with the first-round picks. And then you see the top 10 quarterbacks by NFL executives. And you see what it's Mahomes, Burrow, Allen. Guess who's number 4? They did a poll. ESPN did a poll of NFL coaches and executives.
I've seen it was Aaron Rodgers, right?
It's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers over Jalen Hurts.
Insanity.
What?
Hurts was like 7. Wasn't Hurts like 7?
Hurts was 6. And then so I posted this on Twitter at @fantasy_mansion. And the replies were, that's real football, not fantasy. They said, you don't think Jalen Hurts is great in real football?
Super Bowl participant.
No, Jalen Hurts is actually better in real life than he is in fantasy. Jalen Hurts has always been an incredible real-life quarterback. And we're all about going Alabama, Oklahoma. He is a coach's son, and he is one of the most intense leaders with the most gravitas at the position in the sport. It's a real football take that Jalen Hurts should be in the top 3. It's Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts. Okay? It's Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts. Yeah. That's the list of the quarterbacks that you want to lead your franchise. Okay? Josh Allen has already shown that he is inconsistent and volatile. Okay? More seasons. He has been inconsistent and volatile for more seasons that he's been consistent. He's been consistent for one season, 2020. That was it.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And he's already disappointed. You were just talking about real football, like, do you win championships? Show me the rings. Well, the guy that's been, underperforming Vegas's, odds to win the Super Bowl year in, year out, with the early exits before people are ready for that team. They want, this was the number 1 DVOA team in the NFL last year, the Buffalo Bills. The metrics people, the fantasy people, were assuming that the Bills would at least make it to the AFC Championship game. So, but the real football people, right, the non-fantasy people, were always questioning Josh Allen and his decision-making and whether or not he would be able to carry that team to a Super Bowl. It wasn't the fantasy industry that was anti-Josh Allen, right? But I'm saying, as a fantasy industry personality representative, that even I know that Josh Allen shouldn't be in the top 3. That Jalen Hurts is a real football choice, not a fantasy choice. And the idea that Aaron Rodgers would be ahead of Dak Prescott is a joke. It's a joke. Like they put Matt Stafford in the top 10. Matthew Stafford's dust.
He has no elbow, Matt.
Aaron Rodgers is dust. The fact that NFL coaches and executives across the board, they were polled. All of them were polled. And they had Rodgers at 4 and Dak at 9.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to know. That they would have Rodgers ahead of Dak and Hurts is all anyone needs to know about what we're talking about when we compare the sort of intellectual firepower of any given NFL executive or coach. Get out of here. Mm-hmm. Get out of here. So it totally discredits the argument that, because this guy was a first-round pick, he must be good. No, it's not all the busts that we've seen back through time. It's also that these guys are polled every year, and they have these foolish lists that don't make any sense to any of us that are focusing on the right details. Yes, it is actually true that if I were to take over an NFL team, I would instantly become a top 10 executive in the league.
I've always thought that about myself too.
That's not crazy. That's just facts. That's just
I
facts,
love it.
because we would focus, if I were running an organization, we'd focusing on the details that actually help you win games. We wouldn't be drafting a running back in the top 10. Wouldn't be
Right.
pursuing Aaron Rodgers over Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts, and just wouldn't be making all these foolish decisions like drafting a yak receiver with a 100% bust rating in the first round. So you could go through probably 20 teams, and I could show glaring mistakes that have been made recently that I would not make.
Can I share something with you, Matt? In the show sheet, we talked about if you had a question, you were going to ask me. And if I had a major aha moment this offseason. And I'm gonna share that with everyone here, because I think that this ties exactly what we're talking into. We were sitting at the draft house. We were sitting on the couch, you and I had this epiphany, because after the Bengals selected Chase Brown, you looked at me and you said, Joe Mixon's safe. And my first thought was, what, Matt? What are you saying? You're like, Joe Mixon is safe now. They did nothing to push him out. They're not expecting a suspension. They're not expecting anything. And it made me think, and I've been thinking about this the whole offseason. Coaches speak sucks. GM speak sucks. You know what speak actually helps fantasy managers? Something I like to call the idea of franchise speak. Why does that work? Because there are no words involved. We are playing off of the actions of these franchises. They are speaking to us without using words, because words are BS. And if you ever seen the movie Role Models, Matt? There's a scene in Role Models where Jane Lynch is talking to Paul Rudd and Sean William Scott. She's like, you can't BS a BSer. Don't BS a BSer. These coaches are trying to BS some BSers. Piss off with that. Franchises, though, their actions, they speak louder than the words. Let's talk about the Mixon situation. They didn't do anything to push him out. They kept pretty much everyone in-house. They brought a guy who fumbled against air and he got rocked by his twin brother and did nothing about it in the Senior Bowl. He ain't a dog. He's not taking Joe Mixon's job. So they told us, it's Joe Mixon. Don't worry, boys. The Cleveland Browns, they went out, traded for Elijah Moore, drafted Cedric Tillman. They didn't bring in any more running backs. They let Kareem Hunt go. They're saying they're going to let Nick Chubb get in the passing game. Guess what? They're telling us they're going to pass. They're going to build an offense around their $200 million quarterback. Sometimes these coaches lie, these GMs lie, but the actions of the franchises, they don't lie.
That's right. Draft Joe Mixon, draft Deshaun Watson. That's what you're saying.
Bam, bam. Correct.
That's what you're saying. And that Elijah Moore is a hell of a sleeper.
Elijah Moore is a hell of a sleeper.
Right. Elijah Moore is a hell of a sleeper. He's one of my favorite
sleepers.
Tyler
Lockett archetype, like we said.
I did draft Watson and Moore in the Scott Fish Bowl. I did that. That's a thing that I did. That's a thing that I did. So at that moment, remember, Joe Mixon was going 7th round on Underdog. He was going 6th, 7th round. Okay? Since that moment where I turned to you on the couch and said, Joe Mixon's safe, every week, incrementally, Joe Mixon has gone a little bit earlier, and 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 a little bit earlier. Till now, I'm seeing him in high stakes at the FFPC, 3rd round.
He is who we know he is. And the franchise told us that.
That's what they did. Now, I have 10 burning questions for you. Now, admittedly, we're over 2 hours in.
Oh, it's a marathon, baby. I love it.
We're not going to be able to get to all 10 of these questions, but maybe if we rapid fire,
let's do it.
Maybe it's possible that we get 10 burning questions after this. Leagues all the time. And more often than not, where do we start our fantasy leagues at Player Profiler? On Sleeper. Because it's the best. You can imagine my excitement when I saw Sleeper rolled out. Sleeper picks, baby. Now, you know I love Kenny Pickett, right? Week 1, who does he face? San Francisco. That's a bummer. So I'm going to be going less than on Kenny Pickett's projected yardage and on whichever quarterback is starting for San Francisco in Week 1. Probably not Trey Lance. But then, who do the Steelers face in Week 2? The Browns, right? We think the Browns are going to crank things up. So there, you can say, hey, Kenny Pickett, more than his projected passing yards. And you keep on correlating. Elijah Moore, more than. George Pickens, more than. And if you pick up to 8, that's how you 100x your payout on Sleeper. It's called the Hail Mary. So if you use promo code Underworld, you get a $100 instant deposit match. Check out Sleeper's terms and conditions for details. These Sleeper picks are live in over 25 states. Yeah, buddy. We're back.
We're back, baby. Let's get through these burning questions. Someone in the chat said it's going to be a 4-hour pod. Strap in, boys. It might be.
Yeah, easily. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Give me a guy that you're all in on in Dynasty.
I am all in, and if you have been following me along in any of my content, I am in on DJ Moore, Denniston Moore Jr.
Why?
Because Denniston Moore Jr. going to the Chicago Bears is going to be for them taking the next step in their offense. We've seen what elite prospects and alpha receivers can do for the developmental evolution of quarterbacks. I hate to say A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts because everyone cries about it, but when you do, but let's face it, Jalen Hurts was not accurate before A.J. Brown. They did not throw the ball a ton before A.J. Brown. He changed the dynamic of that offense. DJ Moore, who is a very similar prospect to A.J. Brown. He's faster in the 40-yard dash. He was more dominant in college. He had an early breakout age compared to A.J. Brown. He's every bit that elite alpha wide receiver. So him going to Chicago is going to change things. And this offense as a whole is taking steps in the right direction, right? They brought in Nate Davis to help their offensive line. They drafted Darnell Wright in the first round. We all loved that pick when we were in Kansas City. Also, shout out to you, Matt, for putting that together. That was honestly a blast, and I think we really set the bar high for fantasy people covering the draft at that draft house. Well, that was incredible. So they've done the Bears have done a lot of things that Player Profiler's done. Get better, and it just seeing the next step is going to be a sight to behold. So I'm in on DJ Moore. I've never been out on DJ Moore, and I'm ready to see DJ Moore play with the best quarterback he's ever played with in his entire career.
You need better than PJ Walker?
PJ Walker. Oh, the guy of XFL fame? Yes.
Yeah. So DJ Moore is a fun player because he actually, of all his workout metrics, his best workout metric is the burst score. So you might say, oh, this is a red flag. This is a red flag. But guess what? His yards per reception wasn't actually that high, right? He wasn't winning just on yak. His college dominator wasn't in the 30% zone like a Quentin Johnston and all these other busts. He happened to have some of these receivers that break out do have explosiveness, right? Mm-hmm. Andre Johnson was very explosive. It's not to say that it's impossible, right? All else equal, you want to be explosive, right? That's the thing. And if you can combine explosiveness with a love of the game and attention to detail, then in college that manifests as some of the most dominant seasons we've seen. DJ Moore, 53.3% dominator rating was 98th percentile, which you never see in the Division I. It's a major conference program like Maryland. You would never see that. That's a small school. That's like a Corey Davis, Western Michigan type dominator rating. College target share was 100th percentile, 43.6% college dominator rating. So he was getting schemed into space just like Quentin Johnston, but he was earning targets on his own in all quadrants in a way that these other receivers that I've mentioned that had great burst but couldn't do that. So that's why he's not a comp for Quentin Johnston. He was way too dominant in college, especially at an early age, to be in any way comparable, though he does happen to have this one metric that is similar, which is the burst score. Now, look at Justin Fields. Justin Fields was not a prolific passer last year, but he was a prolific passer at Ohio State.
Correct.
So he has done it, right? Like Justin Fields has done it. In Ohio State, they held him back as a runner and said, listen, you're more valuable as a thrower. He had a 9.2 yards per attempt. And, look at just the total yards that he threw for, 3,200 yards, right, in 2019. 41-3 touchdown interception ratio with less than 500 rushing yards. So that was him being essentially a game manager. And then every year his yards per attempt goes up and up to 9.3 in his final year. That was the COVID-shortened year. He was on pace to almost hit 4,000 yards that year. But because they only played 8 games, we never got to see the most prolific version in college of Justin Fields. That's partly what's holding him back, is because of that COVID year. Nobody knows how prolific of a passer he would have been, right?
Correct.
But we can't extrapolate based on that last season. And that's what the coaches are doing. They don't want whoever the backup. Who's the backup quarterback in Chicago? Is it Nick Foles?
It might be PJ Walker, I want to say.
No, that's right. Yeah, they moved on from Foles. It's now PJ Walker, Nathan Peterman, and Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent's actually interesting.
I like Tyson Bagent throughout the process.
He was the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl. Okay, he was the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl. Better than Duggan, better than those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's no one behind him. So if you see that and you think if it's not Fields, it's Walker and Peterman, then what do you do? By the way, it's like they're just shipping Carolina's just shipping all their players to Chicago. It's Walker, it's Dante Foreman, it's DJ Moore. It's all these guys. So they're like, okay, well, send us your good players and your bad players. That's fine. So I think they have no choice but to dial down the design runs and say, hey, nothing's there and you want to pull it down and run, go ahead. But now that you're going into your third season, let's go ahead and actually unlock you as a thrower. And if they do that, and they don't finish number 32 in the league in team pass plays per game, like 22.4 team pass plays per game is so little. And their pace of play was also bottom 5. So they don't necessarily need to skew the pass to run ratio much differently. All that Chicago would actually need to do is just turn up the pace of play slightly, right? And then that would unlock more pass plays per game. So, in a lot of ways, it'd be straightforward, right? To envision more pass plays and therefore, a true breakout season for DJ Moore this year.
DJ Moore's also shown the ability to get open in the middle of the field. There's 2 stats. When you go to playerprofiler.com, you type in Justin Fields, and you go look at the underlying metrics, which is something I do a million times a day. 2 metrics for Justin Fields' profile stand out to me, Matt. He had a 62.2% red zone completion percentage. That was top 7. And he was a 7.4 red zone accuracy rating. That was 4th best. So what that tells me is when the field shrunk, he was able to dial up his accuracy. So that means to me that with a guy like DJ Moore, that connection over the middle of the field is going to be magical.